Hello and welcome. You are listening to the next episode of Courageous Leaders Connected Teams. I'm your host, Stephanie Freeth, and today I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes look into my journey as an Enneagram 3. I'm going to be telling you parts of the journey so that any of you who are threes or those who are learning to work with the 3 in your life might have a little more insight. And I'm really grateful to have learned the Enneagram because before I knew about the Enneagram, I just didn't understand why I was doing what I did. And I got into a health crisis. I had mono and adrenal fatigue when I was doing a VP level fundraising job. And I was working really hard, had 2 young kids, and all of a sudden my body really said, you have to slow down. And I kept working and I would get bronchitis on top of that. And I really hit my edge. And so later, as I learned the Enneagram system, I learned that the core fear for an Enneagram 3 is if I'm not working, I'm not valuable. And that was a very deep, unconscious part of me that I felt the effects of in real life, but didn't understand what was driving me. And once I saw the Enneagram and learned how these different human archetypal patterns work, I was like, oh, no wonder I've been doing that for all these years. No wonder I am prioritizing work all the time at the expense of relationships. And that was a real wake-up call for me. So the other piece that I really mattered for me, I am an Enneagram with a subtype of self-preservation. And so the subtypes are kind of different flavors of each of the types. They're instincts. And self-preservation is asking the question, am I okay? Do I have enough time, resources, money, safety? Self-preservation can be very warm, can be like a host or a hostess. And so in the 3, the self-preservation subtype is known as the counter type. And what that means is that we're going against parts of the trait. So is where the 3 may be about image, may be about shape-shifting, meeting people where they are, the counter type moves against that. The counter type would say, like, I'm not about image. I drive a beat up Toyota and I don't care. But there are other aspects that I realize, like, oh yeah, I get it. Like this is about image. So that next level of understanding the subtype was really helpful to me. I'll also say that of the type structure of the 3, the shape shifting can be a superpower. It's like learning to meet people where they are. So as a consultant and as a coach, being able to tune into and meet people where they are can be a real superpower. But what happens for the 3 is when that gets overdone, we can abandon ourselves. We're like, well, who am I? If I'm always shifting to meet other people's needs, who am I? And 3s are in the center of the heart center. The 2s, 3s, and 4s, that's the heart center. That's how we process emotions. And even though 3s are in the center of that heart center, a lot of times 3s are skipping over their emotions. It's like, I don't have time to feel that right now. I'm moving on. I'm going to stay task driven and I'm going to keep going towards what I need to get. Because again, there's that core fear driving us that if we're not working, we're not valuable. 3s love efficiency and effectiveness as well. And again, it can be a superpower and a strength. And yet sometimes it's like blinders. It's like not being able to see things. So taking it back to the emotional processing, when 3s skip over their feelings and say, I don't have time to feel that right now, they're missing a lot of life. They're missing a deeper connection to themselves. So as I learned to feel my sadness, my anger, my fear, it was kind of like unclogging a pipe. And then once that life force and those feelings start flowing through, you can feel more joy. You can feel more contentment. You can feel more aliveness in life. And so if you think about this, like, this pipe here and you're not feeling anything, then, nothing's going to be flowing through that, but it can start to expand so that more energy comes through. Because I've also learned that our emotions have wisdom. So sadness is asking what needs to be mourned or let go of. Anger might be asking, what do we need to, something's not working. There's a boundary that needs to be drawn. What needs to stop? And fear might be saying, what do we need to pay attention to? So once we can see emotions as having wisdom instead of being afraid to feel those, so much opens up for a 3 or for anybody really who's learning to feel emotions and has been scared about that. So, I'll describe some of the strengths of the 3. 3s are hardworking, they're goal driven, they are efficient and effective, they're going to get stuff done, they're going to be performance motivated. 3s will sometimes cut corners in order to get to the finish line faster. Now, that can have negative consequences, or sometimes it's really helpful because it's like, we don't need to do those 4 steps. We can go from here to here. And that's what we need to do. So when I see teams who have a 3 in them, there's some drive. There's some let's get this done. Let's organize this. Let's move forward. I have worked with teams in the past that don't have any 3s on board, and actually me being a 3 consultant helps to bring that in for the short term and helps to infuse that energy. But you see 3s in a lot of leadership positions. You see 3s, you see 8s, you see 7s, and all of the types can be leaders if they own their leadership style. I do think that a lot of the corporate culture, at least in the United States, might look like a 3. It's that performance-driven goals, let's go, quick, we're going to move forward, we're going to achieve those results. And some of the downside can be that cultures that aren't paying attention to relationships, like the 2 would do, the considerate helpers, the 2. And so the 2 and the 4 are what's known as wings for type 3. And the wings are kind of like, we've got our main type. It's kind of like the cockpit of the plane. And then the wings are on either side. Some people really use one wing or the other. And then they can also be consciously used as to balance out the type. So if a 3 is being goal driven, then they can consciously go to 2 and say, what's the impact going to be on others for this decision? And how do we make sure that we're taking care of people? We are focused on relationships and not just tasks. That's a 3 really tuning into their 2 wing. And a 3 who's tuning into their 4 wing might pursue creativity. And so for me, what this looked like was, I was a dancer growing up. I was a ballerina. I also sang in high school, but I didn't make, different choirs, honors type of a cappella singing groups in college. And so I had really disidentified as a singer and having that expressive outlet in my life. And so as I was a leadership coach, I was realizing that I was scared to be seen and heard in video, in putting myself out there online on LinkedIn or other platforms, that I had this kind of deep fear, which I think is tied to the self-preservation subtype of being afraid to be seen and heard. But how it's tied to the 4, I tell people, I spent this time creating this album. I went on a songwriter's journey. And if you want to hear more about that, listen to the episode with the Brothers Corin, and they're who I worked with to create this album. But just telling this story in a condensed version, me as a 3 who's always goal-driven and work-driven, having the space to create songs, to record an album, to write the lyrics of those songs myself, that really felt like purposefully developing the creative side, that 4, the intense creative. So people discover the Enneagram at different times. And so for people who are just discovering that the type 3 structure resonates with them and describes their structure, there are a couple different tips that I would have for working with that. And one thing is to realize that we can get healthier or unhealthier within our type. We tend to have a baseline, and then under strain, we will get unhealthier. And we also can really be at what's called the high side of our type when we're letting go of a lot of the type structure. I always tell people, when you work with the Enneagram, doubling down and doing more of your type in a constricted way is not your path to growth with the Enneagram. It's in seeing those type structures at play. It's softening them. It's not necessarily fighting against them, but it's like, oh, can I just see that the type structure is here? Can I be compassionate? Can I have a little bit of space to observe? My type structure wants me to keep working. And sometimes it's kind of funny like when you really start working with it. I think one thing for a 3 is the distinction between doing and being. And when I first heard that, I'm like, what is just being? Like, that never made any sense to me. But doing, there's this compulsion to do. Because again, remember that the core fear of the 3 is that if I'm not working, I'm not valuable, I'm worthless. So when that fear is driving the 3, they don't allow themselves to take a break. They go on vacation and they work. They can't slow down. They can't have open time in their space. They may avoid any type of meditation practice. They may not play. They may just stay serious all the time and keep working, and then hit a health crisis. So making space for being is ultimately a really good thing for a 3. And that could look like starting a meditation practice. And I really love, there's a lot of different ways. I love Locke Kelly and his book and his practices, Shift into Freedom. That's a great way to start. Insight Timer has some good stuff. The Headspace app is great for meditation, but it's a practice of, can I even sit for 5 minutes and just get in touch with my inner self? And for me, the trick for that is I drop from my head into my heart space and just feel what's going on from there. Because 3s who can make contact with what's going on with their heart, this is really our natural home. And yet so many times we've built defenses and layers to keep us away from our heart, or we may have heartbreak, literal heartbreak, probably in the back of the heart. I've found in my experience that we haven't been ready or willing to feel. And it's kind of like the more we're willing to feel our heartbreak, the more love shines through, the more light shines through. So I love that analogy of, in Japanese culture, and I'm forgetting the exact term of it right now, but it's the idea that you can take shattered pieces of pottery and bring those together in a cup, but use gold to mend the seams. And that gold, it's in the shattering, but then the gold comes back together. And it's like, that's where the light comes through. And so a lot of times 3s who are disconnected from their hearts, that, like, I've actually found that I'm actually really sensitive. And so I think that I skipped over my feelings for years because it was too much. It was a lot of sensation. I didn't know how to handle it. I would get overwhelmed. And the more that I have learned to sit in my heart, to heal the parts of my heart that feel broken, and to really learn how to mourn and let go, joy arises, and it's accessible then. Whereas if you're just skipping over it, you don't truly really sink into joy. So that practice really around, can I value that I'm already valuable as a human being? I can be and not just prove my worth through doing all the time. When I walk into a room and I'm heart-centered, I actually can have an impact through my heart, through my vibration, through the energy that I'm bringing into the room. Even if I'm not saying a word, I'm not doing anything, but I'm arriving in full presence with an open heart, I'm listening, then even that has an impact. And I didn't have to do or say anything in that moment to have an impact and to show up and to connect with others. The other piece is that the more that 3s are willing to feel their feelings, then the more others feel connected to us. When we're vulnerable, we open connection. If we are shape-shifting and we're image conscious and we're putting a lot of energy into keeping up this perfect image, people feel that. They don't relate to that shell of an image. And we think that's who we are, but we're so much deeper than that. Yeah, we might have some of the attributes of that image, but it runs way deeper. We connect to our true essence, our that's already whole, that doesn't need any fixing. It just is. It radiates from the core of our being. Another journey that 3s often take as they grow and develop is really coming back to, who am I? And how can I be authentic? Sometimes threes feel like they're not safe and they can be safe to shape shift into being who other people think they need to be. And the safety piece may come from self-preservation, which is my subtype that I was talking about. But the high side of three is authenticity. This is who I am. I'm not shifting myself, altering myself, and abandoning myself to show up as somebody else needs me to be, or I perceive somebody needs me to be. Threes can be really authentic, can be like, this is who I am, take it or leave it, but I'm going to be true to myself and be authentic and be willing to say the hard things. I think, any of the heart types, twos, threes, and fours, if connection is at risk, we can sometimes shut down on saying what we really think. And I'll speak from my own experience as a three. It can also be called separation distress. So if you think about our human needs for how we survive in this world, we need to feel bonded to our tribe, to those taking care of us. And so separation distress is like, I can't be thrown out of the tribe. If my family of origin or if those around me don't approve of me, then I could be thrown out of the tribe and not be safe. So sometimes threes will unconsciously, it's kind of like a path of feeling. So first of all, it's like noticing the feeling that's happening, feeling that as a sensation in the body, labeling what the emotion is, that's emotional literacy, and then am I willing to say it? It's almost like a 3-step process for a three in terms of building emotional literacy and building the bravery to say what we actually think. Because sometimes we feel like we will lose approval if we say what we think that someone else might not like. And if we lose approval, we're risking that separation distress. We're risking losing that connection, which tethers us, which keeps us safe. And a lot of these patterns develop when we're really young. We're doing the best we can to come into a situation. And, a lot of times threes have some early separation from a parent that could show up in a number of ways. It could be abandonment. It could be just not feeling taken care of. And so the three pattern is going to be like, well, if nobody else is taking care of me, I have to take care of myself. I have to jump in and be the one to work hard, to move forward such that I'm okay. So that's where some of that performance-driven stuff can come in, but it happens at a really early age. And I often find the more I share stories with other threes, we've had some pretty similar life experiences with parents in the beginning, sometimes around abandonment and stretches of time of not having a primary caretaker around. And again, that can be buffered, and this goes into attachment, which I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on. But all that to say is a lot of times I find that threes who look very goal-driven and success-oriented have often had early wounding around abandonment. And that's part of their journey as a three to heal those things. And the beautiful thing is, the more inner work that we do, the more our external world starts to change. So what's really fascinating that we don't realize as humans is that our context determines what shows up in life. Our context determines what is possible. And when I say context, that's how am I being with whatever is happening? How is this occurring to me? Because so many times our brains make meaning out of something, and each of the 9 Enneagram patterns is going to make meaning in a different way, and usually a fairly predictable way. And so sometimes what's really cool about the Enneagram is we get to see the glasses that we are seeing the world through, that we otherwise can't see the difference. We think everybody sees the world the way we do, and that's just not true. There's 9 times 3 subtypes, so at least 27 ways of seeing the world, and many beyond that when you add in other influences. But the Enneagram lets us see the box we've put ourselves in. It lets us see how we have created a prison instead of a playground. And the more we start to own our core fear, then the less we're running away from it. The less we're like, nope, I can't deal with that. We own it. We deal with it. We have compassion. And then it's like having choice. I don't have to act out of these structures that are unconscious, but it takes that inner work. I'll always say the inner game runs the outer game. And as I work with leaders, helping them get in touch with why do they do what they do? Where's their motivation coming from? Where's their drive coming from? And when they can see it through the Enneagram patterns, they can also see themselves in those human archetypal stories and structures. And then they have choice. Do I want to keep using this pattern, or is it not serving me anymore? And can I make a different choice? So that's a brief journey into my life as an Enneagram 3. In a lot of ways, I love the strengths that a 3 brings in terms of performance and moving ahead and meeting goals and bringing that to teams. And my journey is really, towards authenticity, but it's not like driving towards authenticity. It's letting these other structures fall away that are our defenses. And it's letting that pure essence kind of rise to the surface. And that's really the true authenticity that is there, but has been covered up by the images that we think that we need to keep up. Because a 3 feels like I can't trust that the universe has my back, that I have to keep working. And if I don't keep working, everything's going to fall apart. And what happens in the journey for a 3 is that we can have experiences like, oh, I am so taken care of. The universe has my back. I can relax into that and not have to work so hard from pure will and pure adrenaline and pure force to move through the world. And I had a beautiful experience after I recorded my album working with the Brothers Corrin. I was driving back from Ojai, California, where we had recorded, and I was going through Santa Monica, and I realized this is before the fires had happened, but I realized I was driving this path where I had been fairly recently with my girlfriends from college on a girls' weekend, and I was traveling this path, and I'm like, I had this overwhelming just joy and surge of love that I'm like, I am so taken care of. The universe has my back. I don't have to be the one to arrange everything. I don't have to be the one to figure out how the world works. Because I think as young children, our egos come in and they think they have to control, and they think they have to set things up a certain way. And the older we get and the more experiences we can have that prove that that's not the case, it becomes possible to trust that the universe has your back, and that needing to overwork and overdo is not as necessary anymore. It doesn't mean I can't, still get excited about the things I want to work on, and I can't bring my full self to what I'm doing. But this new presence and new trust and faith that it's all going to be okay starts to arise. And that is breaking down those patterns where the 3 thinks that they have to keep working or the world's going to fall apart. Those are a few of the stories of my journey as an Enneagram 3. I love to talk about this. I love to talk with other 3s. I love to talk to people who are other types and compare and contrast and see what occurs for them versus what is occurring for me as well. So in the future, we'll have other episodes and guests on who are 3s, but I thought, you know what? Why not give a glimpse into what the Enneagram 3 journey has been for me? So thanks so much for listening. I'd love to hear your comments. If you would like to share in the comments about what it's been like for you to learn about yourself as a 3 or perhaps as another type, I always welcome those comments. So thanks again for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us to make sure that other people, according to the algorithm, who could benefit from this content, it helps it get to them. So thank you so much for your subscription to the podcast, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Apple or Spotify or Amazon. Thank you for that. It helps us reach more people as well. So until next time, stay courageous, stay connected. I'm Stephanie Free. Thanks again. I'll see you next episode.